Okay, let's start class. So let's review where we are. We are discussing or exploring why the United States would want to invade Iran. And so far, we have two good reasons. The first good reason is called the Israel lobby. There are in the Israel lobby millions of Christian Zionists who believe that a conflict in the Middle East, especially between Israel and Iran, will bring Jesus back to earth. They want their God, Jesus, to return to earth, and they believe that a war in the Middle East will force him to return. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason is the idea of empire. America is an empire, and as an empire, it has a lot of privileges. For example, it can just print as much money as it wants, right? US dollars. Right now, America is $34 trillion in debt, and the debt is growing by $1 trillion every 2 months. America can do this as long as it is an empire, as long as people fear America. But as we discussed last class, with Putin's invasion of Ukraine, people are now starting to rebel against the empire, and therefore America must demonstrate it still is the military hegemon of the world, and therefore it can do this by invading Iran. Okay? Today we look at the third and final force driving conflict in the Middle East, and it's really the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Most people think that Iran's major enemy in the Middle East is Israel. In fact, Iran's major enemy is Saudi Arabia. These two are bitter rivals. And to understand why, we have to look at their history. Okay? So the year is 1979. And at the start of 1979, Saudi Arabia and Iran are very good friends. Okay? So let's look at a map of the Middle East. Iran is here. It's next to Iraq. Saudi Arabia is down here. Then this is Egypt. You have Yemen here, Oman. This is the Strait of Hormuz. And this is the Suez Canal, okay? The Red Sea, basically. And in 1979, Saudi Arabia and Iran were very good friends. They had a lot of similarities. They were both monarchies. They were ruled by a king. They were secular. They relied on American power to defend itself. And they were both oil exporters, both very prosperous oil exporters. But then, in 1979, a political earthquake radically changed the landscape of the Middle East. In 1979, there was a bottom-up revolution called the Islamic Revolution. Before 1979, there was a general consensus agreement in the Middle East that religion and politics would be separated. But in 1979, the people in Iran demanded three things. Okay? First, they demanded that the king, they will not be ruled by a king. Okay? That's the first demand. Second is that the U.S. should not interfere in domestic politics. Remember that before the king, the Shia, was supported by the American military. And the third demand is that as a Muslim people, as people who believe in the Islamic religion, the government should be focused on Islamic law. Okay? So, in a referendum, 98% of the people of Iran voted to install an Islamic Republic to replace their monarchy. And this was completely unexpected, and this caused an earthquake throughout the Middle East. In November of 1979, 600 religious extremists tried to besiege Mecca, okay? Mecca is the holiest city in the Islamic religion because it's the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad. 600 extremists tried to take the city over and demand three things, okay? That the Saudi Arabian monarchy should abdicate. The United States should remove itself from the internal affairs of Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia should be governed by Islamic law. Now, this revolt was crushed by the military, but from that day on, Iran and Saudi Arabia became bitter enemies because they were both trying to install their vision of Islam on the Middle East. Okay? So this rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia took three forms. Okay? The first form is religious. So even though they're both Muslim countries, Islamic countries, they have different versions of the religion. Okay? So Saudi Arabia is Sunni, and Iran is Shia. Now, you may ask what the difference between these two different branches of the religion are. And the answer is no one actually knows. It's a very complicated issue. The major difference is this. In 610, the Prophet Muhammad in Medina, in the city of Medina, he had a vision to found a new religion called Islam, okay? And he spread this religion throughout the Middle East, throughout the Arab world, forever transforming the Middle East. When he died, there's a problem of succession. Who would succeed the Prophet as the leader of the religion? The Shia people believe that only people of Muhammad's bloodline can be the leaders of the religion. The Sunni disagreed and said that anyone who proved himself competent and faithful to religion could be the leader. And so for hundreds of years, these two groups, the Sunni and the Shia, fought a war over the succession. And this led to a bitter rivalry that's lasted to this day, okay? Now, the majority of people in the world, about 8%, are Sunni, okay? The majority of Muslims in the world are Sunni. 10% are Shia, okay? So why this is important is that Saudi Arabia is a Sunni country, and Iran is a Shia country. And at the time of the revolution, Iran dedicated itself, committed itself to spreading the Shia revolution throughout the world, okay? Now, Saudi Arabia considers itself the leader